Okay, everybody, we're going to get started here. So, first of all, I want to thank you all for coming. My name is Zachary Parrish from the Secular Education Association. So today we're just going to be kind of walking through our presentation about LifeWise. Happy to answer any questions. Just ask that you hold off till the end, okay? We're going to start with the history about religious instruction. Maybe everyone's order. All right, so one of the first cases regarding release time religious instruction was known as McCollum versus Board of Education. This was heard by the Supreme Court in 1948. The program in question in this case was struck down as unconstitutional for a multitude of reasons. Mainly it was aiding religion inside the public school, violating the Establishment Clause. Some of the reasons for that was because pupils were solicited in the school building. Registration cards were dispersed. This is something that we see today, even though it was struck down as unconstitutional in 48. They think they can get away with it now. The other main point in this case, the justices tried to make it very clear that the decision would have been the same even if the classes had not been held in the school building, because that was another big point of this case, is that the religious classes were actually in the building. But they made it clear even if those classes had not been in the building, their decision would have been the same, because the tax-supported school buildings are used for the dissemination of religious doctrine. The state affords sectarian groups invaluable aid when it helps to provide pupils to the religious classes through the use of the state's compulsory public school machinery. This was a very key point in this case. You cannot use the mechanism of truancy and public school requirements, attendance requirements, to help further your religious beliefs. And that's exactly what these types of release time programs are intending to do. 4 years later, there was another release time case. This is the one that most people are more aware of, Zorak versus Paulson. This is the one that, LifeWise and other release time programs point to. They point to this like it's just some blanket clause. They seem to think that, these are the three main points here, and if these 3 points are met, it's automatically legal. That is certainly not the case. The justices made it very clear each case has to be determined on its own facts, its own details, and its own merits. That's any lawsuit, that's any court case. Each court case is going to be looked at by its own facts and its own details. So this was not by any means a blanket of an allowance, even though that is often how it is, told. Yeah, the main thing here was this was a program in New York, and it was set up so that they could allow this program to happen. This was never meant to be some sort of right. This was never a constitutional guarantee that you could do this. That's something else that we see framed very often, is that it's a constitutional right to do these classes. This comes down to attendance, right? The whole premise of these release time classes are that you're still being marked in attendance. You have the right to pull your kid out of school whenever you want to. Nobody is arguing that. It's not a constitutional right to have them marked as still being in attendance, though. There's another very important detail here that's often overlooked in this case specifically. The complainants, the taxpayers who brought this case to the Supreme Court, they wanted to talk about coercion, but they were not allowed to submit any of the evidence of coercion based on a technicality. They didn't fill their forms out right, whatever it was, but there was a technicality, and the Supreme Court would not hear their case about coercion. So it's a really important point that definitely, it certainly led to the decision, right? If you can't bring the evidence to the court about the case that you're trying to make, how is the court going to hear the whole story, right? So there's some other key points in Zorak that are often overlooked. Like I said, usually the 3 main points are that it's privately funded, it's parental permission, and it's off of school property. But Zorak mentioned a bunch of other things too that are always overlooked. School authorities may not do no more than release students who parents request. There must be no announcement of any kind in the public schools relative to these programs. That means handing out flyers. That means posting it on your website. That means, saying over the announcements. Announcements mean all of that. There can be no comment from principals or teachers about attendance or non-attendance of pupils. And the school does nothing except excuse the pupil. That's literally all they're supposed to do, is just excuse the pupil. Their hands are supposed to be completely out of it after that. Justice Black, he wrote a dissenting opinion in the case of Zorak. There's just a few good quotes out of that dissenting opinion that I really liked. This top one here, precisely the 18th century Americans were religious people divided. There's this narrative that we've always been a Christian nation and founded on Christian ideals. That's just simply not historical fact. If you go back and actually look, there were so many disputes, there were so many fights, there were so many challenges against these different sects, whether it be Quakers, whether it be Catholics, whether it be Puritans. Like, there was a ton of sects even in the 18th century, just as there are today. The other quote here, it has to do with how the decision in Zorak and McCollum both were very controversial, right? And the end of it here, others have thought that the McCollum decision was fundamentally wrong and have pledged continuous warfare against it. This is an ongoing agenda. This has been an ongoing agenda to get religion back into the schools since the 50s and even before that, right? So this isn't something new. This is a fight that we've been fighting for a very long time. What's new about it is how it's being handled nowadays versus how it's been handled historically. I was raised Mormon. I grew up in the LDS church. We did seminary. That's a release time program out in Utah. I grew up over in Ohio where there were very few Mormons. I did seminary before school. I got up at 4 in the morning, drove 45 minutes to my church, and then went to school after seminary. We didn't pay for it. We didn't have merchandise. We didn't have matching t-shirts. We just went and learned about our religion to further our belief and our education in it. And I did it before school because I had the conviction of that is what I needed to do. The excuse is always, we don't have time for this. My response to that is then prioritize your faith. If you think football is more important than faith, what kind of believer are you? Over the years, the constitutional standards have been eroded. Like I said, this is a long-running agenda here. We used to use the Lemon test. That has kind of been done away with after Kennedy. Lee's coercion test, this one is still very pertinent though. It's specifically because it involves younger students, right? Younger students are so much more susceptible to inherent coercion, right? Not direct, but indirect coercion. They view the authority of the school and of teachers as authority because they are. So when you are putting your stamp of endorsement on any kind of religious program, they can't distinguish between that religious program and the school day itself because they are younger. So this one still very much applies. Malicious endorsement tests, this kind of started to erode the Lemon test a little bit. This is when we started to go like more towards direct coercion as opposed to indirect. And then Kennedy is really where the indirect coercion was pretty much thrown out entirely. I work a lot and talk a lot with the organizations like Americans United, Freedom from Religion Foundation. It's interesting, when you hear them talk about this Kennedy case, there was so much that they would not allow, just like the Zorak case. There was so much evidence that they would not allow into the courtroom. They pick and choose one particular incident, even though there were multiple infractions. So we're going to talk about LifeWise a little bit. I'm sure some of you are very familiar with Joel Penton here. He has always been in the Bible business, as you can tell. He started his career out running a ministry that would go to school assemblies. He would go into the schools during the school day and do assemblies focused on, being a good person, keeping your word, that type of thing. Great. But there was always this underlying religious message to the point of him actually getting in trouble a couple times because it wasn't so vague a few times. He did that for many years, going all across the country to different schools. And then he heard about release time religious instruction from his hometown in Van Wert. His sister actually ran this program in Van Wert, or worked for the program, sorry, she didn't run it. She worked for the program in Van Wert for a few years. He claims he didn't hear about it until 2018, 2019. His sister was working 3 or 4 years before that. So I find it hard to believe he never heard of release time, unless he just didn't talk to his sister. But he decided to make a whole career out of this. He wanted to make it a franchise. This is a quote directly out of his book. He said, the thought just hit me, we have to McDonald's this thing. And as you can see, the colors are almost identical, and this is a marketing choice. Anybody who knows anything about psychology and marketing knows that these colors jump out at you. They grab your attention, they're recognizable, they get your interest. This was a very intentional design. Vision statement and philosophy of LifeWise. This is a big issue that I have personally. Again, when I was doing seminary, I was already a member of that faith. LifeWise is specifically trying to target unchurched students in the public school. They have since changed this, which I find it problematic as well. Most organizations don't change something as big as your vision statement, but they knew the word unchurched was problematic, and they have since changed this. The biblical worldview, this really kind of gets down to what they're trying to do. It's not just about teaching these characters and these morals. They want to cultivate a biblical worldview for the next generation. They want these children believing the things they believe, and carrying that on into their adulthood. There's a reason they're targeting children. Something called the 4 to 14 window. This was a study put out by evangelicals, and it basically says if you can reach somebody in the ages from 4 to 14, that is when they're the most susceptible to continuing that belief system throughout their entire life. They're also more prone to having conversations and trying to convert their friends at this age group. Because once you hit 15, 16, you're not necessarily going to be talking about this stuff as much. And this, again, has been going on for a very long time. I was born in the 80s, 90s kid. We had the What Would Jesus Do bracelets back when I was younger. This isn't a new idea. This is, which one is this? The statement of faith. And this is just kind of getting into the doctrine of what LifeWise actually believes, right? Because they claim to be non-denominational, but I see there's different clergy here. Beliefs matter. What you're teaching and what you believe matters. You can't claim to be non-denominational when you have a very narrow viewpoint of these beliefs. The scripture being God's infallible word, that means every word in the Bible is literal.
Amen.
Yeah. I mean, that's what some people believe. Sure. That's not what I was taught. When I was raised Mormon, we didn't believe the earth was created in 7 days. We were taught that God's time is not man's time. We still believed in evolution because they just don't match up. We're not going to go through all these. I'm sure most of you are already familiar with them, judging by the looks of it here. Again, they claim to be non-denominational. I have a real problem with that, considering their curriculum comes from the Gospel Project. Anybody who knows anything about the Gospel Project knows it was developed by the Southern Baptist Convention. So, anybody's familiar with the Southern Baptist Convention? They were born out of racism. No ifs, ands, or buts about it. They broke from the larger Baptist group specifically because they supported slavery. They have a long history of sexual abuse, of not letting women be preachers, all sorts of things. They have a whole dirty history that we're not going to get into today. But again, if this is where your curriculum is coming from, you can't claim that you're teaching something that's non-denominational. Difficult questions from students. I'm sure some of you are familiar with this. This is guidance that LifeWise gives to their teachers just in case these questions come up from their pupils. Family questions. How can I honor my parents? When faced with a choice to obey God or your parents, we should always obey God first. I have a real problem with that. I have a real problem with all of this, if I'm being honest. Obviously, that's why I'm here, right? Will I see my family again in heaven? Well, only if they believe. Put that on a second grader. Tell a second grader that they're not going to see their grandparents because they were Jewish after they died. How do you think that makes a second grader? My mom's boyfriend lives with us. Is that a sin? God created a man and a woman to have romantic relationships within the boundaries of marriage. Great. If you want to believe that, fine. We don't need to be preaching to the kids during the school day. My parents are divorced. Did they break God's rules? Well, yes, that's a sin as well. I know plenty of people who work for LifeWise that have been divorced, right? Everybody is divorced, right? We're talking like 60, 70% of marriages end in divorce in this country. So if that's automatically a sin that you automatically have to ask for forgiveness for, yes, it's just problematic.
Covered by the blood. Amen.
What would God think if I changed my gender? Obviously, I'm sure most of you agree with this. The Bible teaches that God made a man and a woman, and that's that. That's not what biology says. We can get into the different species of animals. They are all over the place. There are multiple genders. We have frogs that would go from male to female. So it's just not what biology says.
So which religion is saying that? I'm sorry. Which religion is saying that there are multiple genders other than
Biology.
No,
Biology.
religion, it's science.
Not the science.
Science.
I'm not here to talk about.
Okay, we're doing questions at the end, please. Try to do respect if you can. I think that's a biblical value, maybe, I don't know. Thank you, go ahead, Zach.
Don't talk about something you're not an expert in, you don't know that.
What makes you an expert? Okay. So again, another problem that I have is the invitations here. If you want to teach your child this, great, go ahead. Don't pressure my child. I have a huge problem with that. And when you're sending your friends in with these little golden invitations and these promises of pizza parties and pieing people in the face, that is coercion. That's not freedom of religion. Where does it say in your religion that you need to be handing out invitations?
Most of it.
No, it says you need to evangelicalize. I understand that. You need to spread the word. You don't need to print out golden tickets. It's ridiculous. That is marketing.
They didn't have printing back then, but yeah, you're right.
So again, LifeWise likes to say that they don't teach this divisiveness. I'm going to go ahead and play this video here. This skit is literally entitled Good Kids versus Bad Kids, and it comes directly out of LifeWise's curriculum. When you're telling me that a student who doesn't go to church or thinks church is dumb is a bad student, you can't tell me that you're not teaching divisiveness. There are plenty of people who don't believe the same faith that you believe. A Hindu student is not bad because they don't believe in Christ. A Jewish student is not bad because they don't believe in Jesus. An atheist student has just as many morals as you do.
Where is that?
Yeah.
Hmm?
Excuse me. We didn't make a whole lot of noise during your stupid movie. Can you please let him speak? He said he will answer questions after.
Which movie?
Off school
Again,
property.
again,
Off
LifeWise
school
loves to
property,
say
I'm
they
sure
don't
you
teach
all
division.
know.
Look at this
Quiet,
post.
let him talk.
They are truly promoting division here. This is saying, look what we learned in our class today. Ooh, God's good. A big, strong guy who says, yeah. Oh, God bad. A weak, gross child. This is a child's version of a Chad meme. You can't tell me you're not teaching this divisiveness when you're literally promoting. Look at what we learned today. Look at the difference. Look at the division here. We'll talk about the financials a little bit. Again, like I said, when I was in seminary, there was no fees. We didn't have to pay for merchandise. We didn't have to pay for materials. We sat down and we read our books. We read our Bible. We read our Book of Mormon. We talked about it. We had discussions. We didn't need curriculum and worksheets and flyers and all of the fancy stuff that you have. There's so much money that goes into this program, and it all gets siphoned back up to the top. This is a low end for a budget. This is a small school sample budget. They have lunch fees. I'm sure most of you are aware of these fees. $3,000 just to get your program running. And if your program doesn't get running, they keep that money. But I think the biggest problem I have with all of this, is this part right here, a minimum floor. You're paying for 50 students, whether you only have 10 students or 5 students, you still have to pay LifeWise for 50 students. That is a grift. I don't know how else you can look at that and support that. It's just a grift. They don't, if a student, it doesn't come anymore, if a student only goes one time, they're still paying for that student the entire year. They're still paying all of these fees. There's also processing fees on everything, on all of your donations, on all of your transactions. All of this money is being siphoned out from your local communities and going back up to the top. You have to make a distinction between your local LifeWise program and the corporate level, because they are two different entities. The local program is completely self-sufficient, and all of that money just goes right back up because you're paying for all of these materials. And that $20 is now up to $30. Inflation, right? I mean, I get it. If your program isn't performing, they will put you in the red zone. They will close your program if you're in a deficit. They will ask the program director to go down to minimum wage if you're not making enough money. This isn't just me saying it. I've got these internal emails here. This is an ex-LifeWise employee. This is one of about 5 that we have talked to and have very similar stories, talking about how money is just so gross. It disgusts me that we want to bring the Bible into public schools and we can't do it because of the price of materials. It's awful, right? So again, she's saying that we could do this for free, as I did, as many programs in the past have. This is just one that's from an employee. Like I said, we talked to about 4 or 5 of them. Recently, some of you may have seen Rachel Snell, who, you know, was fired by LifeWise and went to the civil liberties, whatever court in Ohio, went to the Supreme Court because LifeWise said, no, we're a religious organization, we can fire whoever we want to, employment laws don't matter. Thankfully, the Supreme Court said, no, I don't think so. So hopefully Rachel will be suing them for discrimination. Qualifications. What's it take to be a LifeWise teacher? A minimum of 2 years classroom teaching. Great. Or a church setting. So you can do nothing more than run your local Bible school for a couple of years. You can run your Sunday school for a couple of years. As far as LifeWise is concerned, you're qualified to be a teacher. My mom's a teacher. They go through years of schooling. They go through student teaching, right? They go through all sorts of things that are just not required of LifeWise teachers. They care more that your faith lines up with their faith. There are multiple points about believing their statement of faith, going to a church, getting pastor recommendations, but when it comes to the actual experience, they're a lot more lax on that. The buses and maintenance is another big concern. Again, I'm comparing this to a public school because these kids are being pulled out of the public school. The public school bus drivers have all sorts of requirements that they have to meet, right? They're on tight maintenance schedules by certified mechanics. If they get into an accident, they're automatically taken for a drug test and an alcohol test. Again, none of that applies to LifeWise. I'd like to say, you know, oh, okay, hopefully the LifeWise bus driver isn't drunk, but we will never know because they're not required to go take these tests like the school bus drivers are, even when students get hurt. This particular one, a student was taken to the hospital by the EMS. You know, that's awful. I understand accidents happen, but they should be meeting the same requirements when they're dealing with the children. It's just as simple as that. This guy's working on his own seat. You might say, okay, he's working on a seat, great. Does he also do the brakes? Because I would have a big problem with that. The background checks. I'm sure most of you have probably heard this story already. There are big discrepancies between the background checks that LifeWise runs and what school teachers have to go through. You know, we don't ever say they don't run background checks. That's usually how people frame it. We've never said that. We understand they do background checks. We also understand they are not the same as what public school teachers have to go to. Here in Indiana, public school teachers are put through a child protective system. LifeWise doesn't go through that. The system in Indiana goes through every county in the state to see if you have any hits on the child welfare system. In Ohio, we have what's called a rat back system, where if you are charged with a crime while you're employed as a teacher, there's a flag that automatically gets sent to the State Board of Education, to your local Board of Education, and your administrators, you know, so that they know something is going on, and maybe they need to see what's going on. If you're driving around drunk with your kid in the car, you're probably going to lose your teacher's license, right? Again, none of this applies to LifeWise. This particular case, of course, this director lost her job because she was sexting a student, and LifeWise still hired her, and then they blamed her. They said she didn't disclose that on her background check. I did the background check myself when I first started doing this. It is simply a checkbox that says, do you have any convictions that would prevent you from working with students? Well, she wasn't convicted because oftentimes sex criminals are not convicted. They get off so much lighter than anybody with any kind of drug or alcohol charge. It's absurd. And that's across the board, right? We see that all the time. But she did give up her teaching license permanently in the state of Ohio. Even though she wasn't charged with a crime, that was kind of the plea deal that she made. This isn't the only case. We've got 6 or 7 of these cases where there are people tangibly involved with LifeWise who have been involved in sex crimes or covering up sex crimes. You know, it's not something to take lightly. Globally, 18% of girls and 7.6% of boys, that's 25% of all children on earth, are sexually assaulted by a religious leader. That's a huge number. That's statistics. You want to argue about biology? You want to argue about statistics? Because that's numbers. 25% of kids being sexually abused by their religious leaders. This is something we should all care about, no matter what your beliefs are. The other concern here is that the directors themselves are actually the ones responsible for these background checks. There was a director, Robin McRae, who was subpoenaed to court because she was writing the checks at her local church to continue to pay a pastor who had been moved to a different church to help cover up his sex crimes. So if she's paying off the pastor, why wouldn't she cover up for her teachers? There's no reason to think she wouldn't. And I'll be honest with you, this kind of comes down to doctrine, because you guys you don't answer to anybody but God, right? And that's kind of where this all comes down to when we're talking about covering up these crimes. Your sins are between you and God, not you and the law. And that's just my personal opinion on that. Background checks here. New Prairie had a big kerfuffle about the background checks. This was up in northern Indiana, on the other side of the state. They put out a couple different press releases. They said in fall of 2024 and spring of 2025, LifeWise told the school districts the background check would be completed and shared with the district. A few weeks went by, they didn't hear anything, they kept asking. Finally, the school district communicated that they must be shared by LifeWise. After nearly 6 weeks of waiting, LifeWise informed the district that they would not share background checks results of the volunteers with the district, and would not require the volunteers to participate in the district's background checks, and they were under no legal obligation to cooperate with the request. In Indiana, that's true. They are under no legal obligation to cooperate with the request. In Ohio, my organization fought very hard to get state legislators to put provisions into the bill that they passed so the school districts could dictate these background checks, because it should matter, because it is important. The school district put their foot down and said, we're not going to release these students to your program if you don't share the background checks. And I think it's interesting when they put up such a fight and said it was so hard to do when they have a form. It's literally just a checkbox. LifeWise has a form to consent to share these background checks. So it's not like this is difficult, right? You go through here, you sign it, that's it. You can share it with the school district. It's very simple. There's no reason to put up a fight about it unless you're trying to hide something. Now, that school district did eventually come to an agreement. I believe the agreement was that the volunteers would be doing the district background checks. My question then is, who's paying for that? Is the district paying for that? Because they shouldn't be. That's my tax dollars. Another big issue that I have, student volunteers. You want to say that everybody who works for you and everybody that volunteers for you is background checked? Not minors. You can't background check a minor. This is the extent of the background check for the minors. These 3 questions here. So, I hope you don't lie, but I've seen Mr. Penton lie a whole bunch. So how are these programs actually run? All right, let's get into how this works at the school. It differs in every school and every district, right? This can be run any way you want it to run at the local level, depending on what the school wants to do. Some classes happen during existing specials, some classes happen during library, intervention, study hall, extra class time. I don't know what extra class time there is in a public school. You tell me where extra class time is in a public school. Another thing we see a lot are school aides being sent to these classes. Again, no public resources or funds are supposed to be used. These public aides are getting paid with my tax dollars. It should not be going to these LifeWise classes. It is not their responsibility. It might not even be their belief. Why are they being made to sit through something that they don't agree with? Elmwood, this is one of the most egregious schools that we've had when it comes to crossing the lines. They are renting a school building on school property and doing it inside the classroom for LifeWise. Because again, LifeWise loves to push these lines. They say we do this all legally, but every chance they get, they are stepping across this line, and they are doing it intentionally because they want to change these rules. Make no mistake about it. They actually give security badges to LifeWise. So you have these individuals walking in and out of the school building as they please. They tied up the phone line, they gave them their own extension on the phone line, of course they're soliciting participation, all of that good stuff. Another thing that stuck out there down at the bottom, the principal sent out a email to parents saying, listen, your student might not be making all of their IEP minutes if you sign them up for LifeWise. That's not how IEP works. They are contracts. You cannot just say, yeah, sorry, we're not gonna hold up our contract because you want to send your kid to religious instruction. It is so egregious. We'll play this video here about the actual logistics of pulling the kids out. This is from a school board meeting in Ohio. What is it from? Not Westerville, Worthington.
The teachers that I talked to, they mentioned the office staff, because when you go and you sign a student in or out, right, you're at that kiosk, and we're talking about first and second and third and fourth and fifth graders, really, right? So there's a lot of hands-on assistance that's happening at that kiosk, and that takes time. That also takes teachers who are funded with taxpayer funds, right? The Supreme Court said that public funds aren't supposed to be used for this program, so that's another concern.
Yeah, when the Supreme Court said that this was okay, we weren't checking kids in and out of computers. We didn't have lines in the office of kids waiting to get checked out. This was actually a picture taken by my co-founder in a very small school. She had a meeting with the principal and it was pushed back because of the LifeWise teacher checking these students out, talking to the principal to coordinate things. And this is 4 or 5 kids. There are districts where they're pulling 80–90% of the kids out. What do you think that looks like in the office? It is a cluster. Another key point, at least in Ohio, this isn't the case in Indiana unfortunately, but again, every law differs by state. You're not supposed to be missing any core classes. It's also something LifeWise promotes. They say you're not missing, mandated instruction time. You're not missing these core classes, as we call them. But that's just not true. These are emails from teachers saying students are missing our science and our social studies classes. Students are missing their Title I tier time. And then the principal's response here is, well, parents are okay with students attending LifeWise. They have agreed upon their students missing some instructional time. Not necessarily. These are from Ohio. Ohio law says you're not supposed to be missing these classes. If I'm a parent and I sign my child up for this, I'm assuming the school and LifeWise is following the law, but they're not, and they don't care, and the principal doesn't care. And again, this really comes down to the district. There are some districts who are fully on board with this program. They're fully on board with the agenda. Lunch and recess is really what we push for in our organization. We care about the instructional time. We don't want to stop you from giving your kids the religious education you want to give them. We just don't want it disrupting our school day, and we don't want it affecting our children. So we really push for lunch and recess to be when LifeWise is happening. But as you can see, participation drops in half during that time frame, because what kid wants to miss recess? They will gladly miss gym. They will gladly miss art class. They will gladly skip library, again, to go have pizza parties and ice cream. So this is my personal story here. This is what got me involved. My daughter was in 2nd grade in 2021. I walked into open house and I got the whole sales pitch from her teachers. They told me what LifeWise was. Of course they said you don't have to do it, it's optional, it's voluntary, blah, blah, blah. I said, okay, why is it listed on her schedule then? Because my daughter's not gonna be going to that. So I asked, what's my daughter going to be doing? Because she's not attending this class. She was sent to a gymnasium, to an uninstructed study hall, to play on an iPad and read by herself in 2nd grade. So don't tell me, just don't sign your kid up and this won't affect you. I contacted the Freedom from Religion Foundation. They sent a letter to the school district saying, you can't do any of this. You can't list LifeWise on the schedule. You cannot be punishing these students by sending them to a study hall. You know what the district said? They said he's lying, and they did it again next year, the exact same thing. I promise you I have stacks of documentation, stacks of emails from teachers saying your daughter is in an uninstructed study hall. That is their words, not mine. But the district just said, nah, he's lying, even though I had the receipts. This is an email that we got from a public records request of my daughter's school. This is that gym teacher talking about needing to do an observation. And he says, hey, I have LifeWise leftover kids that day. Can we do it another day? That's how he referred to my daughter. This is the principal of that school, corresponding with the LifeWise director there in Defiance. They were corresponding about behavioral issues and how to deal with it. Again, this isn't the school's responsibility. They're on your time. That is your responsibility. Do not go to the school asking them to handle these problems for you. Maybe you should be qualified to handle them if you're going to be teaching students. But the principal said, you know, if that kid needs some Jesus in his life. This is a testimony from a teacher. She says we're not allowed to teach anything during this time when students leave. Every week they miss their specials. Sometimes students, had a student come back from LifeWise last year and tell the girl that identified as gay that she was going to hell. Again, many of you probably believe that. It's your belief. But then they couldn't be friends with her because of that. He also asked what a prostitute was, and this was after having his feet washed, which, I mean, I don't understand that at all. I just do not understand an adult who wants to wash a child's feet, and that's something we see happening a lot. I mean, I know the Bible. I was Mormon. I understand the passages in the Bible about it, but you're a grown adult. You don't need to be washing the feet of a child.
I wash my kids' feet every day.
Yeah, go kids. Yeah. This is another testimony that we have. My 9-year-old son told me about his friends who was in the LifeWise program, told him that he was going to hell because he didn't believe in Jesus. He said, Mom, I thought all religions were good. Why would I go to hell? I don't understand. This was a Hindu child. Again, it's just not their religion. Joel Greenwood, you here?
Yeah.
Yep. I saw your sermon. I just want to say thank you, first of all, sincerely, for asking everybody to be polite and nice. It concerns me you have to tell them that, but I do appreciate the sentiment. I do want to break down some of the things you said, though. All right. You said that those of us who are against LifeWise say things like, quote, it's not fair because my kid feels left out. Well, wait a second, they could sign up, right? I want to ask you and everyone else here who supports this program to just step outside of your conviction for 1 second. Put yourself in the shoes of another. What about do unto others as you would have them do to you? That's Luke, right? Think about those words and imagine if this was a Muslim program coming up to your child and you were told, just sign your kid up for it. It's not a big deal. And they don't feel left out. All the stuff I just showed you, they are left out. They are ostracized. It's not just about feeling left out when they're being shoved into study halls. You understand how disrespectful it would be if some other religion came up and was doing this and you just were told, just sign them up. It's not a big deal. Why would an atheist family or a Jewish family or a Catholic family sign their kids up for a education in a religion, in a doctrine that doesn't match with their own beliefs? That just doesn't make sense. The other thing you said, other kids come back to school and now my child feels guilty because they were talking about their faith and what they believe. My child feels like they're going to hell because they don't love Jesus. Our organization has been collecting testimonies for about 3 years now. Never once have I seen somebody say their child felt guilty. They felt horrified. They've been traumatized. Sorry, I get emotional because I don't think you guys understand how this actually affects those of us who have to deal with the other side of it. And that's why I'm glad you're here. I hope that maybe you will take something from this. Words matter. These children are confused and they're hurt. They're not guilty, nor should they be. Spirituality is personal.
Since you addressed me, can I ask a question?
That's fair.
Yeah,
I'm putting you on blast. That's fair. Go ahead.
Right. No, I appreciate you. I appreciate everything you said and disturbed by some of the things you said that are happening with LifeWise. Would you understand our our frustration with a school system that teaches things that may not call itself a religion, but is very religious in nature.
Absolutely.
That makes us kind of go like, oh.
Absolutely.
Because I understand what you're saying, like what would happen if I'm Mormon, I get that. I would have to be okay with that if I'm okay with LifeWise, I understand that, or a Satanist or whatever else, I'd have to be okay with that.
Well, and I guess my point is, we just shouldn't have to deal with it in a space that's supposed to be for everybody. I do understand what you're saying, you don't support what the school's been teaching you, it doesn't align with your beliefs. My argument to that is, you have vouchers. We live in a state where you can get a voucher and send your kid to a religious
But what if they
school.
feel left, again, the left out, it would be equal, right? Aren't we on equal grounds at least, because I understand what
Well,
you're
and
saying.
that's why none of this should be in the schools, so
But
that.
how do you determine what's in the schools then, because I get what you're saying, I totally get it, but how do you say, well, this is okay for school and this isn't okay for school, when I would say what they're teaching in school is religion, and so is mine, so who gets to determine what's publicly funded and what's not, because I'm totally with you on all of this, I don't have to argue with you, I like this, so how do we determine what's appropriate then? Because you say, build a wall between church and state, I get it, I get all of that, I just struggle with what they're teaching my kid, and you say, well, get a voucher and go somewhere else, well, my kid wants to play sports. So how do I let them play sports if they're gonna, so just understand that, and if you understand that, that's all I need.
Yours would be something new, because I never got that, I went to public. They are history.
I mean,
She
and I-
asked what religions are being taught other than religion.
Oh, okay.
and let
She
me,
wants that question answered.
and let me try, I guess that was gonna be what I said too, I guess my question to you would be, what would you classify? If you're gonna go on about the trans agenda being in schools, I mean, I'm not gonna go with that. But if we're talking about biology, about evolution.
Yeah,
I mean,
I go there.
that's data, that's
It's
science.
still theory, even they would say it's theory, so. And that's fine.
We're just gonna have to agree to disagree on
I'm not here
that.
to argue about evolution, but evolution, we definitely would disagree on that, and I'm not sure that there is proof for that, and that's okay. You may say there is, I would say, no, you're pushing an agenda on my children.
Yes, right. And they do teach them about Buddhism and Mohammedanism.
And that's, and again, I'm not, please know I'm not here to argue, you do know that, right? Like,
No, I
I'm not here to argue, I
And he
enjoy
was
the
put on
conversation.
blast, he should be able to ask
That's why I let
respectfully,
him.
given that time.
Thank you,
Correct.
I'm done, thank you.
But I also only did that because you did it to us first. But either way, I'll stop harping on you. There's just one more thing here that I want to address. It really seemed like you kind of justified the children telling each other they're going to hell. And you said, I hope they're doing it in love. They're not just running around telling people they're going to hell. I'm going to show you more examples. Usually I just have these couple examples here in my presentation, but we have probably about 100.
You said that, I said, hopefully they're not going around telling
Yes,
people, okay,
yes.
great, yeah, I definitely hope they're not going around telling people they're going to hell.
I'm going to show you what is actually being
Sure.
done in the set here.
Sure.
This is out of Mrs. Magazine. One parent said their daughter was mercilessly bullied by LifeWise kids for just looking like a lesbian. Another had to remove their transgender son from school after he was bullied.
You know that I don't support all these things.
Sure.
Okay, I just want everybody in the room to know.
I understand. There's a big difference between not supporting these and supporting children telling each other they're going to hell because of it.
Sure, sure. But we can point to, again, this is all circumstantial evidence, which I'm totally against, but I feel like I could do the same for the opposite side, looking at my kids, telling them that they
Yes,
don't love other
yes.
people because they just don't agree with their lifestyle.
Yes.
So I just want to be cautious.
Yes, sir.
It's circumstantial. But I disagree with all of this and don't like any of this.
We don't take funding from the public school.
I never said you did. Yeah, again, it's like I'm so crying because we don't go to church, we're going to hell.
The
Is
kids
that-
fight too, and they shouldn't do that, so, I mean, kids.
Okay, I'm not gonna sit here and disparage parents and children and their stories. You can do that if you want to, I'm not going to.
But you don't have the other side
You're
of it.
doing it right now.
Yes.
You don't have the other side.
It's okay, it's okay, it's
Why do you have to go into the public schools to recruit people into your religious viewpoint? You know, that's what you have Sunday.
I'm sorry, I brought up the question, we're supposed to wait till the end, you go ahead and finish, please, I just let it run, it's good.
You're good. Again, okay, you don't support the transgender stuff. Fine, I understand you don't support that.
They try to teach it in schools and that's.
Okay, I'm not gonna entertain that. That's bullshit, and I'm not gonna say I entertain that. Sorry. I'm in public schools every day. My mom was a public school teacher. My daughter goes to public school.
Teacher too, and I know what they teach.
Okay.
It's the.
But again, they're not teaching that. This example has nothing to do with it. This is about a haircut. A girl got her hair cut short, and they were asked, "Are you a boy? Are you trans?" over a haircut.
Those are kids, right?
Yep.
Okay.
A LifeWise student punched my daughter in the face in the school bus and tried to cut her hair with a pair of scissors after my daughter told her we don't go to church and we're not Christian. I was not informed of that incident by the bus driver, coincidentally, because the bus driver is also one of the bus drivers for LifeWise.
As a kid too, right?
These are all kids.
Okay.
The children told other students who are not LifeWise members not to be friends with my daughter because she's a sinner and she could or would be going to hell. Kids are coming up to her saying they couldn't be friends with her. So again, I understand you might believe if you don't believe in Jesus, go to hell, but is this how you are told to treat those of us who don't believe what you believe? But that is how it gets translated to these young students.
Kid, right?
My daughter
They
came
come
home
up
in
with
tears.
it on their own though.
Yeah, there's a lot of things that happen in school that they don't come up with. I mean, I know kids that were bullied because they were
There's
in
a whole
school or they
lesson.
didn't do sports. I know kids that were specifically bullied.
There's
because
lots
they
of
were-
bullying in school, so
because
is your
they were
argument, let's
religious.
add to that?
Because they were a part of the church or had
But
connection.
we aren't
So
teaching our children
There's a
to do
lesson.
that.
they're not teaching those
Yes.
children.
Yes,
Clearly
there
shows you a
are.
lesson.
That's
No,
literally what is being
That is
taught.
not, that's crazy.
Yes, it is.
My fifth grader was told Jews aren't people. You want to defend that too?
It's a child.
Yeah.
They're learning it from you.
They're
Yeah.
not learning it from me.
Not learning it from me.
They're learning it from the LifeWise
They
program.
might
Go
be-
ahead,
they're
Zach.
not learning it from LifeWise. It's not what LifeWise teaches.
There's a whole lesson.
I mean, I'm just gonna skip through these because clearly you guys don't care. Yeah. It's not just the kids that get bullied. Y'all like to bully me too. That's cool. You can say I'm a fool. You can say I'm possessed by demons. Whatever. I'm an adult. I can take it. I got this sweet long message about how I was physically and mentally abused as a child. God told this individual that I was physically and mentally abused as a child. God got his communication across because I had a great childhood. Again, I'm an adult. I can handle that. Second and third graders shouldn't have to be. Now, the other thing that I always get is I'm just a Satanist. I'm just an atheist or a Marxist. I've been called everything in the book. It's not just me. There are plenty of churches who have spoken out against this program as well. Presbyterian, they say, urge members of the congregation not to host LifeWise Academy. Provide information to the parents about the LifeWise curriculum and how it is in conflict with the theology that we believe, because again, it is not non-denominational. Presbyterians, Catholics, the Jewish community, many faiths have spoken out and just simply said, this is not our doctrine. This is not what we believe, because there are so many different flavors of Christianity. Coercion doesn't stop at just personal attacks on me or student to student. This is Joel Penn texting a couple school board members, because there was one school board member who didn't want to adopt a policy back before Ohio was mandated to adopt policies, back when there was still some local control, which I thought Republicans believed in small government and local control, but whatever, they're passing state mandates now. Mr. Penton here reached out to the Lieutenant Governor Houston, who then called the school board member and said, you need to get this passed, not once, but twice. I can't imagine being somebody who was elected to represent my community and getting a call from the Lieutenant Governor telling me what I need to do because I'm being pushed by the CEO of a corporation. That is what he is. He's not a pastor. He has a marketing degree. Our Attorney General in Ohio, same thing. Directly pressuring these school boards. This wasn't just sent out, to everybody. This was addressed directly to a superintendent, saying, this is all fine, it's great, you need to do this. That is not neutrality. LifeWise is actively pushing to change these laws. And again, you guys can argue with me that this is a right, that you have to do this. It comes back to attendance, right? You have a right to pull your kids out. You don't have a right to have them still being marked as they're in school. But LifeWise is actively pushing to take this local control away from school districts. They did it in Ohio, they did it in Indiana, they did it in Oklahoma, they did it in Texas, they tried to do it in Nebraska, Missouri. They are all across the country trying to change these laws. They say they're not political, but here they are actively lobbying and posing with merch. These are LifeWise buses. Does that not strike anybody as gross and inappropriate? You're literally posing with merch as the legislators. This is an old graphic, but it shows their growth. I'm sure most of you are aware they're up to 1,000 schools now. But it's just been exponential. But again, of course it has, because they're mandating that schools cooperate with these programs. It doesn't show an interest, it shows coercion. This is the growth of LifeWise, starting back in 2024 when we first started tracking these districts. There are 10 steps here. I didn't do that slide today. There's 10 steps to getting these programs launched. Step 1 is collecting signatures. Step 10, your program is active. You got the key down here where all the colors mean. But this is April 2024, July 2024, November 2024, February 2025, April 2025. They absolutely blew up in a year. The revenue did as well. When I say all this money is being siphoned out of local communities, this is what I mean. These year-end profits are not normal. They're not normal in the private sector. They're not normal in the nonprofit sector. They're exponential. Nobody sees 300% growth year over year, 200% growth year over year. It's obscene. And a lot of it is coming from major donors as well. It's not all coming from local communities. They have plenty of big pockets supporting them, propping them up. Again, they love to say they're not political, but these are all of the organizations who they are working with. First Liberty represents them, the Herzog Foundation, all of these people. Again, I'm not going to get into the politics of it because I'm sure many of you agree with most of these organizations and what they're trying to do. I don't. That's the beauty of America. We're diverse. We should be able to have these conversations, but you have to acknowledge where the money is coming from and who is propping them up. Don't sit here and tell me that you're not a political organization or you don't have a larger agenda when these are the people you're working with.
It's coming from the church.
Those aren't churches.
This one I just found last night actually. Is anybody familiar with the Wall Builders Association? They are personally probably the worst one in my personal opinion of all of these organizations. They are really pushing for this revisionist history. You know, slavery wasn't that bad. We're a Christian nation. Again, I'm not going to argue that, but like when you're defending that slavery wasn't that bad, I will argue that. You know, these are the people that Joel Fenton is rubbing elbows with. This is the map of all the state laws. There are 3 different laws. Some states have no law. They just go off the Supreme Court decision, which says schools can do this. There are may states, which have specific state laws that say schools may allow these programs in. And then the red states are shall states, where they're saying the schools have to cooperate with these programs. You see the little LifeWise logo there? That's all the states that they lobbied in the last legislative session. Nebraska actually stopped them. Arkansas actually stopped them, which was a big surprise to me, if I'm being honest. But there were many states that were successful, and as you can see, they're claiming they have 20 more bills this upcoming legislative session to keep pushing these law changes. And the law changes are expanding. They're not just saying that schools have to cooperate with these programs. You can look up their model law, their model policy, which they brag about having First Liberty help them write, having the Wall Builders help them write, having the Alliance Defending Freedom write. You know, they call them the good guys. Again, many of you might agree with that. I don't. But this is direct lobbying, which a nonprofit is not supposed to be doing. And again, are they doing it because they want to bring the Bible, or are they doing it because they're a corporation who doesn't want schools to be able to tell them no? That's for you guys to decide, I guess. So, wrapping up here, we'll take a look at the local view. The only school district that they are in this area is Angola. They're 6th and 7th grade there. Prairie Heights almost has enough signatures. Hamilton's getting there, and Fremont is kind of way behind. Like I said, 50 signatures to get your program started. Once you get your 50 signatures, you start raising money and, you know, keep going through the 10-step process to get your program implemented. It took me a while to find the discussion about LifeWise at the school board here in Angola. It was October of last year, so it was over a year ago. This was the only time LifeWise was mentioned to the school board that I could find. It was the only discussion about this program coming into the school. The timestamps here are 24 minutes to 31 minutes. I did the math for you. It's 7.5 minutes to discuss the LifeWise program at the Board of Education meeting. The intro is 45 seconds. The LifeWise promotional video on YouTube was 3 minutes. And then there was 3 minutes of actual discussion about the program. And I say that, it really wasn't a discussion. According to the superintendent, the program was supposed to start in February of 2025. I'd like to know, was there a reason for the delay?
We had a director and she needed, because of family reasons, to step away.
Sure, reasonable enough. Yeah, the program actually just started last week, October 21st. But again, that's over a year since the board was made aware that this would be coming to their school. I'm curious how many details changed. The superintendent here said that the students would be transported to Pleasant View Church of Christ. I don't know if that's still happening or if there's some other location. And location does matter. You know, a lot of times they're going to local churches, but we have so many instances of them going to places like gun clubs. We have instances of them going to somebody's personal garage. And again, that raises all sorts of safety issues. Are there fire extinguishers and sprinkler systems in somebody's personal garage? I highly doubt it. Are these kids going into somebody's home to use the bathroom? That seems weird to me. Again, when you're supposed to be in your school day. And the worst one actually came out of DeKalb. Some of you might have heard about this. DeKalb Eastern was going to send LifeWise students to Color Master, to Chemical Dye Factory, which is super concerning in and of itself. They were going to do it in the conference room, so great. The students aren't going to be on the factory floor, but there's still dangerous chemicals there. It's still a fire hazard, and in fact, the building did catch fire not too long ago. But the most concerning part of that whole thing was that they hired sexually violent predators. There was an employee who worked at Color Master who had charges that I'm not even going to repeat because they were so grotesque. And again, you are just taking these children into that vicinity where it would be so easy for a predator to get access to these children. And that's what predators do. They look for easy access.
Have you been to Walmart?
Yeah. I don't take my child's class with me though. That's the difference. Do you not understand that? I'm not talking about my child. I'm talking about everybody's child.
Okay. This sounds really personal, so I just want to make
It
sure.
is. Did you not hear what my daughter went through?
So
It is
it is about
personal.
your child.
It's about all of the children.
Okay, just wondering.
I mean, if you're okay with kids being around sexual predators to teach them the Bible, go deal with
I
that.
don't think anything says that.
Nobody is
Nobody's
okay with
with
that, but it has happened because of background checks. When you come to background checks for a school system, we've already had it happen that somebody came from Florida or Georgia or someplace.
Yes.
Okay, they were a sexual predator and it didn't come up on their background check
Sure.
right away.
I understand this is across the board.
Okay, so, I mean.
Let's do better. Let's not make excuses. Let's do better.
But that's not
I agree.
LifeWise, that's
I
just,
agree,
like,
but-
that's a.
That's across the board. I literally
Right.
just said that.
Okay.
So can LifeWise not do better? Are they just saying, well, it's everywhere, so let's not worry about it?
That's
Okay,
not what
but
it's saying.
that's
That's
not
not
what
what
I'm
I'm saying.
Okay, then do better.
Yeah,
But we have to do that all the
absolutely,
way
yes,
around.
do better.
We agree.
But I have two great-grandchildren that are going to LifeWise and another.
The assistant superintendent also said the kids would just be missing study hall. I'm curious if that's still the case, because again, this was over a year ago. And again, this is middle school. You know, middle schoolers have study hall. Second grade, they usually don't until LifeWise comes in. The other claims the assistant superintendent made here was that LifeWise would be doing all of their recruiting outside of the school at churches and community events. They would be solely responsible for getting this information to parents. I hope that's the case. I hope that's what's actually happening. That's typically not what we see though. We see these permission slips being sent home from the schools. We see the schools handing out the information, posting it on their websites, all sorts of stuff. And again, even that argument fails to address the fundamental tactic of getting the students to convert their peers, because that is what this comes down to. LifeWise knows that it is protected speech for a student to go talk to their peers about their beliefs and their religion. The LifeWise teacher can't come into the school and try to convert the other students, but the kids can. I think it's really important for schools to understand they can limit that to non-instructional time. They can limit those disruptive conversations to lunch and recess and hallways and not during class time. The discussion here at the school board meeting closed with the assistant superintendent emphasizing that LifeWise obtained 50 signatures from the community. Maybe. We've gotten copies of these community interest lists before. We've gotten them through records requests and things like that. And local community members have looked at this list, and it turns out, it was signed by a town over. One mega church at a town over filled out that list. So it's not necessarily community members. Seems like here it probably is, judging by the crowd here. So, great. If this is what your community actually wants, fine. But you should verify that, because LifeWise doesn't. I signed those community interest lists using a fake name and a fake email, and I still watch the count go up because they do not verify. I think that the district's apathy and lack of discussion is nothing short of negligent, if I'm being honest. The board has a responsibility to the students to have a 3-minute discussion about this with no other questions being asked, with no memorandum of understanding being signed. It's just a derelict of duty.
Well, we don't know whether what you're saying is true or not, because you don't have any voice.
Well, you can go
We're
watch
not
the
listening
video.
to them.
Their sound doesn't usually work, so that's
You can get on YouTube.
Actually, it came in a board meeting before the year prior.
In 2023? What do you mean?
Well, it wasn't in that setting, it was a setting in the gym.
Okay, well, I looked through the agenda minutes, and this was the only one I found. So, if they were talking about it 2 years ago, okay. But again, if there's over a year passing, I feel like there should probably be another discussion about it. I just think the board members need to be fully informed, and they need to adopt a policy that addresses some of the issues that we talked about today. Again, I'm not trying to take this option away from people. I just want it to be neutral. We just want it to address the issues that we've raised today, because they are real issues. Everybody loves to say that we're spreading misinformation and that we're misinformed. I brought the receipts. I don't make a claim that I don't have documentation for it. We just don't. I find it ironic, the same day LifeWise starts, the school district actually expanded their own background checks. That's just the top of irony right there. But again, the background checks weren't even mentioned during that 3-minute discussion. So what can you do? Our biggest thing is raising awareness, engagement with the community, having these conversations. School policy is very important, and voting, of course. So, thank you guys. Happy to take some questions now.
Why do they feel the need to come into the school? You could go to church on Sundays, there's after school religious things all the time, especially in a state like Indiana where you already rank 41 out of 50 in educational achievement. Why are you pulling kids out for religious instruction? And I guess I just don't understand that part.
Well, I'm sure the argument would be because you don't agree with what the school is teaching. My argument to that is because it's exactly what the Supreme Court warned about, using the mechanisms of the school and the compulsory attendance to get these kids engaged. right? Kids have to be at school. They have what's called a captive audience when they're coming into school, so. Yeah.
I just want to say, I'm very sorry about what happened to your daughter. That is just, that is.
And I get emotional about it, but it's not just my kid. This is happening all across the country.
Yeah, but my question is, what would you do different? Like, how would you do this?
How would I do what?
Well, like you're talking about all the things that are wrong with LifeWise. So if you were to have a program, like how would you
After school.
conduct it?
Parents need help after school so they can go to work. Parents need help before school so they can, you could feed these kids breakfast before school and give them their religious education. There are plenty of ways to do this that don't affect the school day. But again, if you have a problem with the public education system, that's not a concern to you. Yeah.
Been listening to you for some time.
I know, I've been droning on, so I'm sorry.
Bashing this program and bashing their funders, you say. I'd like to know who you work for and who funds that.
I got a donation box right over there, so I don't get those Soros checks. I wish I did. I haven't been able to get a hold of them. I've tried. I work part-time at a comedy club. I have a blue-collar job. I do this 40 hours a week. Nobody pays me. I take donations. Anybody else? Yeah.
I would point out to the gentleman about science. I'm no expert on this myself, but I've read a number of things about how gender variety is got a lot of connection to both genetic variants, epigenetic variants, issues that occur in embryo. There are a lot of things that affect the gender expression of individuals, to the point that the idea that everybody is either male or female in the traditional sense is just simply not what science believes. It is certainly a very popular and understood general concept, but it is not scientifically supported.
Even Jurassic Park said that. I mean, the dinosaurs changed sex, so I don't know. But again, I'm not here to argue that. So, anybody else?
I would say that the X and Y chromosomes pretty well are markers on what actual gender is. And if there's science that backs that up, I don't think it's been mainstreamed yet.
There are a lot of people who, I shouldn't say a lot, there are
People don't think
people who
vaccines
do not
are
have just
mainstream
X or Y.
science, so I'm not gonna argue that.
The gender variety, it begins with changes in the genetics, but there are a number of other factors.
But is that what life is? I brought that up because it was spoken by you, that you don't want gender taught in schools or whatever, but it is being taught. There are things that are being taught. And so that's why I brought it up. But is that what we're talking about, LifeWise?
Should they not teach science?
They should teach science.
Okay.
But so the question is, the science that hasn't been proven, there is a lot of science that's taught as fact that there's not necessarily proof for, but we teach it as scientific proof.
That is a trope within the religious community. It is not an understanding within the science. It is not within the scientific community. I'm not talking about like the college over in Warsaw. I'm talking about standard scientific books and understandings. Is that evolution is a fact. They use the phrase theory of evolution because there are a lot of things they're still working on, trying to figure out how this, that, and the other happens. It's a whole process. But there is no doubt within the scientific community that evolution is a fact. It happened.
Right.
The same with the geology. The same with the geology. The Earth is billions of years old.
My response is, who cares? Why does it affect you so much if somebody wants to change their gender? Why does that bother you?
Well, it doesn't.
Less
It
than
doesn't.
1%
It's how it's
of the
taught in school.
population.
Yeah.
Then let's move on. You had a question? Yeah.
It's being taught in the school, that's the problem.
Okay.
It's not being taught in school. We're teaching them not to
Can you
hate
speak
people.
without getting up?
No,
Just
because
like-
I want to talk to you.
Okay.
I like to talk to you.
My goodness.
We don't teach them. We don't teach them.
Okay, we're moving on.
I know there's a certain amount of transparency with
state, or rather, school district, government supplied curriculum. Is the LifeWise curriculum available for parents to review?
Good question.
Yes. How would
You
I
know
get
why?
that information?
Do you know why it's available for us to review?
Because of you.
Yeah, that's right.
Yep.
And you don't see that that was a problem, that they wouldn't share it with clergy or school board members? You think it was just about copyright? Their argument was people are gonna take our curriculum and start their own programs. Really? Or did you just not want people to see what it was?
I just, if I could, just on the side of LifeWise, we do not want, we are not passing things out at school. The staff is not helping us. The only thing the staff might do, and I think it was because of our first class, was make sure that the kids got down to the door they were supposed to go to.
Sure, and that's understandable.
And that's it.
And that's great, but
And-
that comes down to, it is run differently in every school, in every district.
I want this community to know that we're not doing those things.
Good.
I wanna make that clear. We wanna love on these kids. We wanna teach them values, some good values that hopefully help them then in school. I would never say, anyway,
I know that there are a lot of.
if we had a bus, we would have someone that has a CDL license drive it. We don't have a bus, we have a van right now. It's donated by the Angola Assembly of God Church. They're allowing us to be there. It doesn't cost us anything to be there at the church or for the van. And the kids are never alone with an adult, never. We usually have two teachers we have a teacher in the classroom and two volunteers. If someone's driving the bus, there's a volunteer on that bus with the bus driver, or the van driver.
Why can't you do that after school? Why
Thank
does it
you.
have to be during the school?
A lot of kids can do extracurricular activities even before.
So sports
Well,
is more
this
important.
could be considered that, and if it's important enough for them to do basketball, then they may wanna do
One
this.
class per week.
Exactly.
Exactly.
I just wanna say, I
And it's
really,
during their study hall.
and that's great.
Yeah.
Again, talking middle school, high school, that's a totally different story as far as I'm personally concerned. And it's just so important. I know I've been up here bashing LifeWise. When I'm talking about LifeWise, I am talking about the corporate, because I know there are a lot of good, well-meaning people that are working at the local levels. I just want them to be aware of what is actually going on. And I think the problem with the discrepancy is there is such little oversight. So,
Well, and it's good for you to point some of these things out because, we want to be cautious and careful about what we are teaching and that they don't twist that around. And so that's a very good thing because we want to stay with the basics of the Bible, not get into doctrine questions because like you said, there's all kinds of religions, there's all kinds of even churches that call themselves Christians. And we still set on certain scriptures sometimes that instead of looking at the whole Bible as a whole. And it is nonprofit. It's like Parkview. How does Parkview Hospital have all that money to do all the advertising and the donations that they do? Because they're nonprofit and they've got to get rid of that money some way or another. I don't know. They took my money. But they do have some coaches and different people that they do need to pay to teach us what to do. And we've had some really good people help us, and we've also taken a lot of courses online to prepare us for every single role. I have several roles right now until we have more volunteers, but I have sat at a computer and done courses, which you know that happens.
I have the courses in my hard drive. I know. Can I just say what I would love to see, and we haven't seen it yet, is one of these programs actually giving back to the community in a substantial way. That's something that we just haven't seen.
Oh, yeah, there's evidence right here.
I think it would be great. I mean, that's,
See, this evidence?
is that the TPM report?
What's TPM?
Is that a report about how it improves attendance and behavior and all of that?
Yeah.
Do you know who paid for that study?
In what form would you like to see the?
It's independent. Do you know who paid for it? Ambassador Enterprise is one of their largest investors. So I don't know how you can say it's independent when you're.
So I love that. How would you like to see it?
Yeah, in what form would you like that give back?
Anyway,
LifeWise
community
Academy
food
gave
drives.
$500 for worship night at the park, September 21st.
You say community food drive?
So, anything, I'm just saying, it's just not something we see a lot of. I would love it if we did, because you are a nonprofit, you should be giving back to the community.
Zach, thank you for coming tonight. I'm Dan Foster. I pray for every person that's in attendance here tonight. And I am one of your Baskin-Robbins Christians, okay? I'm a pastor here in the community. I love people. My wife and I, we live in town. We live right between the Methodist church and the Congregational church. We go for walks. I pray over every house. I pray for every person, those who are involved in witchcraft, those who are involved in LGBTQ, those who are involved in anything that maybe I don't agree with. But tonight, I'm standing here, and I want to make myself known that I do stand for LifeWise. And you know what my agenda is? My agenda is to indoctrinate and proselytize every one of your children. I want you to know that. You've got me on camera. You know who I am. And I'm standing up for what I believe in. And Zach, I'm praying for you too. I shook your hand when you came in tonight. Pray for this meeting. I'm praying for you. I see you as a Saul. I think God has a purpose for your life. I think God has a way for you and wants to bring you to a different way. You guys may not agree with me, and that's okay. I love you anyways. But here we are tonight, and I'm going on record. I want anybody here tonight who is for LifeWise to stand up right now. Go on record.
Sit down, girl. All the Dominions. Shame on them.
That was great. Oh, wow. That's okay, it's okay.
I've never had a group come out like this who does support LifeWise.
I also just want to say, everything that people are saying, you're like, I agree with that. I'm glad that you're doing that. So do you now support LifeWise in Steuben County? Because we're doing it correctly?
No.
Why?
During school hours.
Because it's during school. Being honest, I appreciate that that's your conviction, and I appreciate you standing up for that, but don't come at my kid. Don't come at the Hindu kid, don't come at the Jewish kid.
But the parents have
Well,
a
that-
son.
And that's what I believe, and I believe every church leader in here should stand up for the gospel of Jesus Christ. You may be one of those Baskin-Robbins Christians, but if this is not something you believe in, hey, it's not. He said many flavors of Christian. I'm sorry, I just kind of.
I like that.
It made me laugh. It just made me laugh.
That's just kind of insulting to the rest of us who are so religious.
He really said different flavors.
And I'm praying for you, man. Yeah, I think it's good. We have, as a ministry, we have looked for different ways to incorporate the love of Jesus Christ in this community. As I said, we pray. I'm also bivocational, so I don't necessarily receive a paycheck from my church. I actually work another job, and that's my also my theory too, is to be working with people in the community. I won't stop until I talk to every child. I won't stop until I talk to every business leader in this community and get them back on track to lead this town back to Jesus Christ and kick out every witchcraft. I will support whatever it takes to bring back.
Maybe we don't want Jesus Christ. And that's love. This is love.
Why is it so hard to respect somebody else's beliefs?
Yeah.
Why can't you just say, great, you believe that, I'll believe this, I don't need to try to convert you.
And that's why.
Everybody, I just want to say thank you for standing up and stating with transparency what you believe. I do respect that. I want you to know why I am not convinced that LifeWise is a good thing for our community. I don't know enough about it yet. I don't like the corporate ties that it has, because I see a lot of people in our church who are hurt by a lot of the proselytizing that those organizations do. That does not mean that I think everyone who supports them is evil. It doesn't mean that I do like spreading the message of Jesus Christ. I've dedicated my life to it. It doesn't mean I don't want that either. What I do want is for people to be able to have also the freedom to choose those 31 flavors. And I want there to be the kind of discussion about our faith that has been historically part of it since the very beginning. since Christ's own preaching, since his way of being with people, the rabbinic traditions of debate that we get Christ's theology from, and I want to leave that to be free. So, it is not my goal to proselytize to everybody's child or to make this town Christian, so to speak, because that's a kind of impossibility. Christianity is a thing that we choose because we have been called or understood something in a way that moves our hearts. And Christianity is something we do as an act of love. And I worry that some of the stuff that's happening with LifeWise might not promote the ability to keep loving one another the way that Christ loved, which was through healing, right? He fed people. He said, you should visit people who are imprisoned. You should make sure the widows and the orphans are taken care of. And to me, that seems like the unifying place where all Christians can come together. So the idea maybe of giving back to the community and treat them the way that Christ asked us to treat one another. For the rich to give up what they have, that's a hard lesson from Scripture, and make sure that the money goes to the poor and the needy. It doesn't mean I think LifeWise is necessarily evil. I just want to know more. And I want to keep that plurality, even of Christianity, alive and well in our town, in our nation, and for our children, adults, and everybody else. So I just wanted to say that I appreciate everybody speaking openly. As a pastor in town, I just wanted to add.
We're not supposed to beat them. Thank you.
As a teacher in an inner city school where we had every flavor of Christianity as well as Jewish families, a Buddhist family, and several atheist families. The only thing we didn't have was Mormon. What happens to those kids? When
They don't have to come. It's a choice. Their parents have to sign a
believe me,
petition.
some of these things go on. One of the most dynamic discussions on lunch hour was a Muslim student discussing with a Christian student how this all happened and to come up with this line down here. And then we didn't know that.
There's a way to have those conversations respectfully. There's a way to have those conversations respectfully. And again, if we're talking about middle school and high school, it's a big difference when we're talking about elementary, where clearly something is getting lost in translation when they're coming back and saying, you cut your hair short, are you trans, you're going to hell.
Well, I'm the first LifeWise teacher, and I want you to know that I've been in public education for 46 years. And some of the things that were said, that the kids say to one another, that's not going to be what I'm teaching. I'm going to teach about love. In fact, I taught 7th grade social studies, and there's religious studies in the 7th grade social studies curriculum, if you don't know. 3 major religions of the world, and we talk about all the beliefs, basic beliefs. And actually, the golden rule is found about all the religions of the world. Love will be focused in my lessons. Love for one another. And so it's not to be a divisive, it's not a divisive curriculum. Sure, there's things in the Bible, things we can look at, and judgments of those, but no, I'm going to try to promote, it's going to be about love, love one another. And our community will be better for that.
I hope you skip the lesson on good kids versus bad
Thank you,
kids.
that's what I was going to ask.
Saying bad kids don't go to church. Just skip that lesson for me, all right?
I haven't found that one yet.
It's there. I can show it to you afterwards too.
Sir, I saw a big promo from the Danville area for the LifeWise program, and it was very disturbing because it was not about love. It was about Jesus, without defining anything further about Jesus, including the love that Jesus projected. It's all conversion. It was a LifeWise promo to try to get the program into the Danville, Indiana schools. And I'm glad to hear what you're saying, but I'm just not sure you're in sync with the LifeWise program as it's presenting itself to the public.
I would say there probably are many programs that are like this one. I would hope that there are. Hopefully, I'm just finding the bad ones because that's what I'm looking for, right? I can address my own bias. I'm not above that. but there are fundamental problems that you have to be proactive about.
And I appreciate that.
Yes, you're way patient, I know.
I have,
Yeah.
thank you. I noticed that several of us were lumped together based on our looks or based on our voting preferences, and I'm gonna surprise you because I couldn't agree more with you on several things that were stated. From, we absolutely should come from a place of love. Never should a child go tell a child that they're going to hell. That is not my place as a pastor's wife, an educator, or mere humanity, right? That's not my job. However, here's what I would say to you. They did speak tonight on where it is being held, how they are doing it, and there were several times where you did agree. Is there a place where your organization and you directly would be willing to come to those places where you think are doing it more correct and come to the table and us have an open discussion about how do we do this better and how do we make this a program where all feel welcome, all feel loved, and no one is uncomfortable at the end of the day? Is there a place where we can lay aside this, it should not happen versus this should, and we can come together and we can look at that program together? Would that be an open door?
Yeah, I think these discussions are always doing that, right? I mean, at least I hope. I would hope that your program can be an example for other programs, right? As far as myself and my organization, we don't want any of it. We want the public schools to just remain free from all of the religious influence, because again, do we want 5, 6 different programs coming in using our school as a battleground for souls? Do you want the Satanists coming in, pushing back against you? I mean,
We already are.
The Satanic Temple's starting a program?
Go ahead, I'm not, yeah.
I didn't know that.
Ma'am, the central question I keep hearing here, is LifeWise for converting people to a particular brand of belief in Jesus, or is it for, what I'm picking up from some people, the idea of improving children's lives, improving their attitudes, improving their moral outlook, however you want to put it. It seems to me those are, I know a lot of people believe the two have to be together, but there are a lot of people who don't believe that. And so to reach your goal of everybody being in a good place with this, I don't see how that can be the religious conversion program that I understand it to be and accomplish what you're talking about. It just seems like that's not what LifeWise is presenting itself to be.
I think those
Since you asked me a question, can
Sure,
I?
please.
So are you against LifeWise as a program, as a whole entity, or are you against children being taught to love one another, to come together? Is there a difference in your mind in that viewpoint?
Well, my problem is with coercive conversion.
I can answer it. What he's trying to say is there's a difference between teaching these children to come together and love one another versus trying to convert them.
That Jesus is one way and the only way. That's what he's saying. He's saying, can you just teach a class where Jesus isn't your primary focus to, you must believe in Christ, you must believe in Jesus, or else. So love as a whole is the 31 flavors. He's just saying there's 2 different things. You have an agenda to teach these children that Jesus Christ is the only way to salvation, to heaven, to anything. And that's why he's asking, is that the curriculum is to teach Christ and only Christ, or is your message just love no matter who you're,
Can
no
I
matter
answer
who's
that
Lord,
from
no matter
LifeWise?
who's Lord?
I watched the movie. Yeah, they said everyone has value, but only Christians believe that. That was in the LifeWise movie.
Only believe
that
what?
I just watched. That
That
people
Jesus
have
is
value.
the only way?
No, that Christianity is the only belief that believes everyone has value. So that because I'm not a Christian, I don't believe everybody has value. That
was in the movie.
Exactly what was said in the movie.
And I wholeheartedly do not agree with that statement, nor would I back the movie. So let me, you know what I'm saying?
That's what I
To me,
said. That's from,
Yes.
the corporate.
And I think there's a line there between I'm pure LifeWise, I'm not, versus I think children should have the opportunity to explore different things, whether that be Muslim, Indian,
Exactly. In my house, everybody was. My kids were actually raised going to a Christian church. They learned all kinds of things. They have chosen not to believe.
That's the impact. I think
That's their choice.
Absolutely, and they'll all come together, right? And so that's where I think that judgment translates itself. To have that opportunity.
For all the supporters of LifeWise that are here. So what you're saying is you're entrusting your children to be taught how to love each other and be good people to someone else. So what you're saying is you can't do this at home, and you're the parents.
We're not the parents.
All
of us are volunteers with no children at the school.
Do you have children?
Yeah.
Okay, I have children too.
Okay.
I taught them from little on.
Okay.
To love other people and treat them with respect.
Okay, but what about your neighbor lady who didn't teach her children and her children really wanted to know? You just leave them go?
No.
That's not your business.
Won't God find them? Won't God get to them?
Hey,
So
There's gonna be things we disagree and agree on.
We're all entrusting your, kids in these programs when you don't really know.
Why do you send your kids to school?
And it's
At least they look up who the teachers in school are.
Why do you send your kids to school?
LifeWise no longer tells you who the teachers are.
So,
They've got
that isn't, like, that doesn't, your argument there doesn't play out with that. Like, you don't need to send your kids somewhere for them to learn. Correct, yeah. Absolutely.
They're qualified to educate your children.
Absolutely, yeah, I am.
Okay.
You should read the US education statute.
I've read the statistics in
Have you?
Indiana.
So you know that
And
a
we know
college,
that a lot of children here are not.
you know that Indiana colleges would, out of 100 students, would rather pick 90 homeschool students than 90 school students, sexual school students? Like, do you know that?
I know a
No.
lot more than what you're saying.
Oh, so you know that, you know that to be true? You know that to be true?
No.
Then-
don't have anything to do with.
Yeah, I was gonna say, we're not arguing homeschool against other stuff.
What does that have to do with LifeWise?
Because she asked why someone had to teach her.
All right, we're gonna let Joel say what he wants to say, and then we're gonna close up at 7:30. I gotta pack up, the library closes today.
Yeah, I appreciate you, brother. I hope you know that. I hope you felt that from me. I can only represent myself, so I hope you felt that. I respect everybody being here for sure. Certainly, two of the differences we're gonna feel that we're just gonna come at an impasse, and I can respect it for sure. You don't want us teaching the Bible in school. We don't want them teaching certain other things in the school that we don't like, but we don't get to make that decision. My kids go to public school, so it's fine. It's fine. I could pull them out. I could.
And it's not just the Bible.
It's not just the Bible.
The Satanic Temple came to our organization.
Yes.
And said, we're gonna do our own program.
Yeah.
And I said, okay, cool, are you gonna do good background checks? Are you gonna have transparent curriculum? The answers were no, no, no. It's the same problems without the doctrine.
But we agree on that 100%. I want to do everything we can to protect.
So do you actually stand up against those organizations and too, like LifeWise?
I'm sure.
Yeah.
I absolutely so.
Yes, I'm glad you did.
Yes.
Here's the difference. As a pastor, our main faith, one of our things that we believe, that those that don't believe what we believe, is that we are to love others to Christ. So that's gonna be the difference. You're gonna love others, we're trying to love others to Christ, and it's not doing the things that he mentioned up there. I am going to love you, I'm gonna love those that think different. We don't agree on our theology, we don't agree on lots of things. I still can love her, she still can love me. That's fine. So we still do our own things, and we still love each other, so it's wanting to love. But yet part of what I believe to be true is, and I just want you to understand, I don't want you to agree with me. I just want you to understand that if my faith teaches me that if somebody doesn't believe in Jesus, they are going to hell, and I love people, just at least understand that that's why I'm trying to teach them about Jesus, even if you disagree with me. Just like I would expect the Muslim, if they believe I'm going to hell because I don't believe what they believe, if they love me, I would expect them to try to teach me what they believe. Does that make sense? I just want you to understand that.
Mormons go door to door.
Mormons go door to door, right? So I just want you to understand that's the heart behind it, and not everybody does it right. A lot of people do it wrong.
But I think there is also a point where somebody says, this is not what I believe.
Yeah, let them go.
Let them, yes.
Let them go, 100%.
That is what
Jesus said the greatest commandment. The greatest
to love God with all your heart, mind, body, and soul.
You have no idea.
And the second one is to love your neighbor
As yourself.
as yourself.
And we don't always do that.
We also said there's no hate like Christian love. And tonight we see it here in spades.
I hope you didn't see it in me. I don't see it.
Let me add, but it also says that on these two commandments hang the law and the prophets. So the love comes before. You interpret the Bible and the prophets through the lens of love, not the other way around, right? So I just want to add that important scriptural addendum onto there, because it means to me, because all interpretation of the Bible is by default, or all translation or teaching of the Bible is by default interpretive, because we have to make statements about what ancient documents mean today. But for me, it's a matter of, okay, I'm going to, on my side of the spectrum of theology, I'm going to adjust my theological approaches based on the love of God and neighbor, not using legislative biblical law to tell a neighbor, this is how you have to be. So then, I mean, that's a reasonable reading of that scripture.
Agree. What I don't want to happen is.
Thank you, Zach, for coming.
Yes.
Thank you, Zach.